This is my new compressor. I bought it from SGS Engineering. It's a direct drive V-twin air compressor. It's a 14.6 cubic feet per minute machine with a 50 litre tank, 3 horsepower motor. Now, one thing I will say is there are very similar machines for sale out there, and I suspect they're exactly the same machine that has just been rebranded. This thing is produced in China, but the Airmaster Tiger and the Clarke Raider look like identical machines to me, as well as some other ones that are out there. I've used this a bit already and I'm quite impressed with it. This is the machine that it's replacing. This was manufactured in 1992, and the reason that I've decided to buy a new air compressor is because I'm getting frightened of this tank now. Now, these actually generate water condensate inside when they're in use, and they rust from the inside out. Eventually they can get that thin that they explode, and it is a very dangerous situation if one of these things decided to explode. There are videos online showing this occurring. This is seriously old now, and I figured it was about time I played safe and bought myself a new compressor. Now you can see that my new compressor, the SC50V, is much bigger than this one. It's, you know, roughly half the size of the new one, and the reason that I've gone for a bigger one is because this one quite often let me down when it came to capacity. The reason that I chose SGS over Clarke Machine Mart is that this was considerably cheaper. I paid £226 for it, I think it was, which I think is really good value for money. So while it's up on the bench, the first thing that I want to show you is the drain valve on the bottom of the tank. Now that's just a little nailed knob under there, and if I turn it, because there's air in the tank, you can hear that it's draining at the bottom. There is no water coming out of that, and it might be worthwhile if you're actually draining the tank to put a little container underneath there to catch any water. Well, that's the first thing that I want to show you, the drain. I'm going to shut that now. So as you can see, the compressor has got 2 outlets, so you can run 2 different tools off the compressor at the same time. Now these outlets I call Euro outlets. I don't know whether that is a correct terminology, but I'll show you what the actual fittings look like. So the fittings for the outlets are these. I think they're called Euro, I'm not quite sure. So as you can see, there are 2 pressure gauges there. This one is the actual pressure gauge of the air tank. That tells you how much pressure is inside the tank, and the one on this side tells you what pressure you've got going down to the tools. This is a regulator. It's what you actually use to adjust the pressure going to the tools. If you turn it clockwise, you can see the pressure goes up. Anti-clockwise, the pressure goes down. Now you probably can't hear it, but it's venting a small amount of air off here to bring that pressure down again. So as far as the regulator is concerned, I do not like this design at all, because the regulator is trapped between these 2 outlets, and it's quite difficult to operate it. This is really stiff for some reason, and I'm finding it quite difficult to turn it. That is a bit of a poor design. I think I would have probably elongated it so it came out a little bit further, but you'd still have the problem if there were hoses and fittings connected in here. So that is something that I don't particularly like about the compressor. On the top here, we've got the pressure switch. Now that is what turns the compressor on and off to actually keep this tank at 2 set pressures, the maximum and minimum pressure. And at the moment you can see we've got pressure in that tank. Shortly I'll actually connect this up and show you how it operates. But suffice to say that that is factory set, and you shouldn't be messing around with that unless there's a problem. This red button at the top is the on-off button for the compressor. It's on the pressure switch. If you pull that up, the compressor will start, and then once it starts it will operate on and off depending on what this switch tells it to do. I'll demonstrate that in a minute. And to stop the compressor, you just press that down. So that is the power button basically for the compressor. This is a plug for the oil reservoir. The compressor oil goes in there. This is what I would call a PSV, a pressure safety valve. It prevents the tank from being over pressurized if this switch doesn't do what it's supposed to do. So I ain't sure whether it's supposed to be screwed in permanently, but to me I think you need to unscrew it. So once you've unscrewed it, you can pull this cap out and you'll hear what happens. And it will vent the machine. As soon as you let go, it cuts it off again. That's how you check that the PSV is doing what it's supposed to do. So I've got to say that the instructions that come with this machine leave a lot to be desired. That pressure safety valve being a point in question, because when you look at the instructions on here, it's not the same as the one that's on the machine. So I don't know whether it's supposed to be screwed out permanently or whether you're supposed to screw it in. But seeing as it's working with it screwed out and I can test it, it's not leaking, I'm going to leave it screwed out. So I think people that are retailing these tools in the UK need to actually rewrite the instructions in the UK and make sure that everything's covered to a point where people know exactly what's going on with the machine. That's just a little gripe I've got with people importing Chinese machines. I've got nothing against Chinese machines, but the instructions are regularly pretty poor, or very poor in fact in some cases. These ones are not particularly good. So the wheels on this compressor make it pretty portable. It is heavy, it's 48 kilograms, so it's not a light piece of equipment, but the wheels do make it easy to move it around the workshop. On the top of the compressor there is the thermal reset switch. Now this pops up if the compressor gets too hot to protect you and the machine. Now what you've got to do if that pops up is let the machine cool down, and then you'll be able to press that down to reset the compressor. So I've vented off the tank, I'll switch on at the wall, and I'm going to start the compressor, as I said, by pulling up this red button on top of the pressure switch. And then I'll time how long it takes to fill the 50-litre tank. But I'll speed it up on the video so that you can actually see it going all the way through. I'll just time it. As you can see that it switched itself off at just under 10 bar. So that is what the high point of the pressure switch is at. That's when it switches the motor off. Now what I'm going to do is vent off the tank and we'll see when it switches the motor back on again. Remember, I'll just leave this pulled up and the pressure switch does all the work. So that's about 7.5 bar. So the tank operates between 10 and 7.5 bar. So that's about 110 to 145 psi. I've swapped over the outlets from the left hand side as I'm looking to the right, and you can see that is supplying air to both sides. So now I'm going to show you a practical demonstration of this compressor in use. I bought this angle sander a few years ago to use on my old compressor, and in all honesty my old compressor was just not up to the task. I'll connect it to the air line from the compressor. There we go. That is way quicker than the electric tool that I use. So the next thing I use my compressor for all the time is to actually inflate my car tyres. And I bought myself a decent tyre inflator for that. So this machine will be perfect for inflating car tyres. An impact wrench. Very handy tool. So this is my old faithful brad nailer. So this is my trusty old spray gun. I bought this the same time that I got the old compressor, so in the 90s. It's just water. This is a pneumatic chisel. Now it's designed for concrete, that type of thing, but you can see what it's capable of. This is the thing that I use more than anything else on the compressor. And it is literally just a straightforward blower. An air ratchet. This is my nail gun. and it drives in 2-inch nails. Very handy piece of kit. So that's me finished for the day now. I'll turn the machine off at the wall, press down the on off button, and I'll just depressurize the outlet and drain the tank. No, there's no water coming out of there, which is a good sign. So that's a quick look at my new air compressor, the SGS SC50V. Remember that Airmaster and Clarke have rebranded that same compressor, and they sell that machine as well in case you want to have a look at them. I've used it for a few hours and so far I am really impressed with it. Now, I'm glad that I spent the money on the bigger capacity, first of all on the tank and secondly on the amount of air it produces, because as I've been using it I've noticed that it's lasting a lot longer between the motor kicking on and off when I'm using the power tools that I've got. So a lot of the power tools that I wouldn't use on my SIP compressor I will be using on this machine. And one thing that I have found over the years is that air tools are usually quite a lot cheaper than their electric equivalents. So you can save an awful lot of money once you've got the compressor by buying cheaper air tools. Now there is a little bit more maintenance involved, but it's a bit of a trade-off either way. But I shall be using my air tools quite a bit more now that I've got myself what I consider to be a decent compressor. Now I hope you found this review useful. Thank you very much for watching and please take care.